Welcome to African American History Lesson 52. In this video, we will learn about Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association. What if freedom meant more than integration? What if it meant self-rule, economic power, and global unity among people of African descent? In the early 20th century, Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, ignited one of the largest mass movements in Black history by asking just that. Founded in 1914 by Jamaican-born activist Marcus Garvey, UNIA became a global force for Black pride, economic independence, and Pan-African unity. By the 1920s, the UNIA had grown into a transnational organization with millions of followers, branches across the world, and its own flag, anthem, newspaper, the Negro World, and shipping company, Black Star Line. Garvey's message of race-first solidarity, self-determination, and a return to Africa resonated with African-descended people facing colonialism, segregation, and systemic oppression. The UNIA empowered Black communities to build their own schools, businesses, and institutions, and it left an indelible mark on political movements throughout the African diaspora. Although controversial, Garvey's legacy continues to influence global Black political thought, Pan-Africanism, and nationalist ideology. Founded by Marcus Garvey in 1914 and expanded in the United States after 1916, UNIA became the largest Pan-African organization in African American history. Garvey envisioned a mass movement that would unite all people of African descent under a shared banner of pride, self-determination, and global solidarity. At its height, the UNIA had hundreds of branches and thousands of members throughout the Caribbean, Latin America, Africa, and North America. Through speeches, conventions, and publications like Negro World, Garvey mobilized a transnational Black public and challenged the colonial and racist systems that oppressed African peoples worldwide. A central tenet of Garvey's political ideology was the Back to Africa movement, which called for the repatriation of African Americans and other members of the African diaspora to their ancestral homeland. Garvey believed that Black people could never be free under white-dominated governments, and instead should return to Africa to build a sovereign Black nation. To support this vision, he founded the Black Star Line, a steamship company intended to facilitate commerce and migration between the diaspora and the African continent. Although the company ultimately collapsed under financial and political pressure, the vision of Africa for the Africans became a rallying cry for global Black liberation. Garvey's message resonated deeply with African Americans who had endured Jim Crow segregation, racial violence, and economic marginalization. Through the UNIA, he promoted industrial, educational, and political advancement by urging Black people to build their own institutions, schools, businesses, newspapers, and political structures. Garvey's vision of Black separatism was not based on racial hatred, but on empowerment, a belief that Black people should not wait for acceptance or equality within white society, but instead should define and control their own destiny. His emphasis on African heritage and collective self-worth laid the cultural foundation for later Black nationalist and Afrocentric movements. Garvey's influence extended far beyond his lifetime. His emphasis on anti-colonial struggle, diaspora unity, and racial pride helped shape Black political thought across the globe. The UNIA's red, black, and green flag, symbolizing the blood, skin, and land of African peoples, has endured as a global emblem of Black liberation. Garvey's ideas inspired countless movements, including the Nation of Islam, the Rastafari movement, and various African independence struggles in the mid-20th century. Though controversial and often criticized by his contemporaries, Garvey's legacy remains central to understanding the evolution of Pan-Africanism and the global dimensions of Black nationalism. Marcus Garvey's address to the Second UNIA Convention captures the bold rhetoric and sweeping vision that defined his leadership of the global Pan-African movement. Speaking before thousands of supporters, Garvey articulated the goals of the Universal Negro Improvement Association: racial pride, Black self-governance, economic independence, and the unification of all people of African descent. His call to action, Africa for the Africans, at home and abroad, served not only as a demand for liberation from colonial rule, but also as a rallying cry for Black solidarity across the diaspora. This speech stands as a defining moment in 20th century Black political thought, It offers scholars direct insight into the ideals and urgency that fueled one of the largest mass movements in African diasporic history. This photograph of Marcus Garvey at his desk in 1924 offers a compelling visual representation of Garvey, not only as a charismatic orator and movement leader, but also as a disciplined administrator and architect of Black institutional power. While seated at his desk, Garvey is surrounded by the papers, symbols, and structure of the UNIA, underscoring the organization's global reach and organizational ambition. The image conveys his commitment to building an independent Black infrastructure, complete with newspapers, businesses, and governing bodies, intended to rival the political and economic systems that excluded African people worldwide. This photograph stands as a powerful reminder that Garvey's vision was not merely rhetorical, but operational, a blueprint for global Black self-determination. This photograph of Marcus Garvey in Harlem in 1924 captures the magnetic presence of one of the most influential Black leaders of the 20th century at the height of his global movement. Harlem, then the epicenter of Black cultural and political life in the United States, served as the UNIA's headquarters and the staging ground for Garvey's mass rallies, parades, and conventions. In this image, Garvey sits adorned in military regalia, emblematic of his vision of Black sovereignty and structured leadership. The public spectacle of Garvey in Harlem reflected more than pageantry. It represented a bold assertion of Black pride and unity, as well as a global mission to dismantle white supremacy through organized Pan-African solidarity. The UNIA, under the leadership of Marcus Garvey, ignited a global movement rooted in Black pride, economic independence, and Pan-African unity. At a time when white supremacy and colonial domination defined much of the world order, the UNIA offered a bold alternative: self-determination for people of African descent, at home and abroad. Though Garvey's strategies were debated, his message of racial uplift, institutional autonomy, and global Black solidarity reshaped political consciousness across the diaspora. His legacy endures in the symbols, movements, and philosophies that continue to inspire struggles for freedom and self-definition throughout the African world. Marcus Garvey's movement wasn't small, it was international. With powerful speeches, newspapers, and parades, he inspired Black pride and called for economic independence and unity across the African diaspora. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, please follow us on the social media platforms listed on the screen.